What's up guys, the Codeholic is here and welcome to the second part of building an MVC framework using PHP. In this part we're going to implement modals, forms and validation, and we're going to create a registration form. Okay, now let's actually implement registration. So we have to create a modal, and the modal needs to do validation part as well. If there are some validation errors, we need to display this inside the form, and more importantly, we're going to create a record in the database. Okay, let's start step by step, and I'm going to create first a modal. So let's go to the auth controller, and right in the register, when we need to handle the submitted data, I'm going to create a register modal right here. New register modal. We don't have, of course, this register modal class at the moment, so I'm going to create this inside the modals folder. The namespace will be up\modals, and here we have the class. And what do we need to do right here? So first we have to create all the properties we need inside the modal. So we have public string first name, right? We have last name, we have email, we have password and password confirm. Okay, so let's just rename the variables. Email, this will be password, and password confirm. So how to do the validation? Here we have a couple of options, and depending on what option you choose, your code might be very clean and easy to understand and read, or it might be not very clean. Okay, so that's the part which we need to do carefully. So of course I can take the data, the whole data, basically request, dump, request, get body, and this will be the whole data, and I can take the first name and check if the first name is not presented there. Just do so. Let me show you the bad way, so how you can actually do this. So first of all, let's see that we actually get the submitted data. Let's go to the register. So let's just type Zura, hit the enter. Okay, the register modal is not imported, so let's just import this register modal. Okay, it was imported. Basically, if the modal is not imported, so what you need to do is just hit the Alt and Enter, or just right here, Control and Space. So it auto-completes automatically, finds the proper name, and just writes an import. So let's start just one trick of PHP Storm. Okay, now let's have a look. So here we have the data, first name, last name. So what we can do right here is that create a variable first name, which equals request get body. Let me remove this var dump. Request get body first name, and then I can write if first name doesn't exist, then we need to create some errors array. Okay, right here, errors equals an array, and then scroll down right here. We need to pass the errors inside the view, so that the errors can be used inside the view to make the fields red, write some text that hey, this field is required, or so on. Okay, and right here we just need to write inside the errors for first name key that this field is required. Okay, so using this approach we can actually get the errors right here. So let's just dump the whole errors. Okay, let's have a look, refresh, handle submitted data. Okay, here's the thing, we actually handle the submitted data right here, and let's just dump the whole errors. Okay, right here. Okay, so let's have a look. Here are the errors array, because the first name is already presented there, but you get the idea, right? So we have to write an if else statements, and this will finally populate the errors array. And then if there are some errors, if the errors array is not empty, we have to render the same form right here. If the errors array is empty, meaning that every required field was satisfied or every validation was passed, then we need to handle the submitted data. Okay, this is how you can do, but the disadvantages of this is that we have to actually repeat this code a couple of times. but for different variable. Okay, last name is also required, email is also required, and we have to repeat these 3 lines, which makes the controller not very readable, as well as it's repetitive logic. Okay, we might need some required logic in another controllers, in another action, and we have to do the same thing right there, which doesn't make any sense. So the best way to do this is through models. So now I'm gonna remove these things. Okay, let me actually Control Z, undo everything, and here is the register model right here. Okay, perfect. Now inside the register model, let me import this once again, and I need to do a couple of things. Okay, so first is inside the register model, I want to load the whole request data. So register model load data, and I'm going to pass the whole request data get body, just like this, and then I'm going to write if register model validation is passed. Okay, then I can call on register model a register method, which should create a record in the database if validation was passed, and register this also created an account. We just return success. Okay, we just show the success page with some splash screen, I don't know. Okay, but if the registration wasn't passed, or the validation wasn't passed, or the registration didn't happen, we have to render the same register form, and if there is some validation errors, we need to show these errors as well. Okay, so what we need to do here is, and if we just filled up some data, so if we just open and fill up some data, here we have undefined errors. Let me just remove this as well. So, and if I just fill up some data, hit the enter, and the validation didn't pass, then I have to show this Zura in the first name per populated. Okay, so the data basically will be saved inside the module, because we're gonna load the data inside the module. So we can pass this register model as a variable inside this register view. Okay, we can do right here, and we can do the same thing right here as well, and just create this instance out of the if statement. Okay, so this register model is always available. It can be accessed from here as well, but by default its first name, last name, email, everything is just uninitialized. Okay, now what we need to do is to load the data. Okay, so I'm not gonna create these methods right here in the register model, because the load data must be general method for all methods. So all modules, excuse me, all modules should be able to load data inside the module. Okay, so for this we have to create a core class. I'm gonna call it model. Okay, and the model will have the following methods. Okay, the method load data, which will accept data right here. So it needs to have also a validate, and the register method. So right now, if we just extend our register model, extends model, and have a look in the out controller, we can see that the load data and validate methods can be understood by the PHP Storm. Okay, and by hitting the control and the mouse, I can follow the method. But the register method doesn't exist, and that's specific for the register model. Not every model will have the register method, of course. So right here, I'm going to create register model and just write creating new user. Okay, so now let's go back to the model and actually implement this load data. How do we need to do this? First of all, we have to iterate over the received data with key value pairs. So key and value. And then we need to check if the given key exists inside the module. So this key might be first name, for example. And we need to check if property exists inside this, the given property, the key property, first name or last name or whatever it will be. If the property exists, then inside this, for the given key, which will be first name, for example, equals to the value. Okay, Using this approach, I'm taking the data and assigning to the properties of the model. Of course, the model itself doesn't have any properties at the moment, but the register model has these properties. We can make this model even abstract to just avoid creating an instance of this model. Okay, so we just need to make sure that we have subclass to create an instance and to use this load data. Right now, when we do this, if we go into out controller and just dump the register model and have a look right here, let me actually fill up something. Okay, so sura@example.com 1234 hit the enter, and here we have it. So this is app model's register model, and its properties are actually populated: first name, last name, email, password, and password confirm is actually uninitialized. I don't know why this happens, to be honest. Let's go to the form and see what's the name of the it's called confirm password. That's the reason. Okay, because inside the form we have confirm password, but the class, the register model, doesn't have confirm password. It just doesn't populate this. So if we just change this confirm password into password confirm right here, or change into confirm password right here, it will work. So let's reload the page. Oops, and here we have it, confirm password. Awesome. But here's one important thing to consider as well. So later we have to implement the validate as well, right? So let's just start the validate, and I'm going to mention this point as well. So how do we need to do the validate? So each model needs to have a validation rules, and the validate function just needs to go through all the rules and test the validate attributes against these rules. Okay, so I'm going to create an abstract public function rules, okay, which must be implemented inside the child class. And let's go to the register model, and we can say that this must return an array as well. And if we go into register model, we see that we have this red underline, and we have to generate these, implement these methods, okay, this method rules right here, which must return an array. And let's just right now come up together how the array should look like, okay? What kind of validation rules should we need to write there? So first of all, let's define what validation rules we need to have. So I'm going to create constants for this in the model. Okay, let's make an actual public constant. Okay, public const and rule required. Okay, this is very basic what we need to do. Okay, so what rules do we need? Let me duplicate this few more times. So I think we need a rule for whether the input should be a valid email address or not. Okay, we need that. We might need the minimum length and maximum length fields as well. And let's create this. For example, the password cannot be less than 8 characters for something like this. And we might also need later, but not now, but later, the unique rule, which means that the email, if the email is already used in the database, we should not be able to use the same email. But let's leave it for now at the moment how it is. And yeah, well, we need one more rule, which is match. Okay, the password must match to the password confirm or vice versa. Okay, and then what we need to do is go to the register model and create right here an associative array. So I'm going to write the first name, which is the property of this class, needs to have the following rules. Okay, self rule required. Okay, this is the rule for the first name. Let's duplicate this few more times. So we need rule for the last name, it must be required. Rule for the email, it must be required, and it must be also valid email address. Okay. As for the password and password confirm, they are required, or how it's called, confirm password, right? So confirm password. So both needs to be required, and the confirm password must match to the password. So right here we can just write self match, rule match, but we have to specify as well to which attribute this must match. Okay, the model cannot understand by itself whether maybe it needs to match to the first name. I don't know. So maybe we can change this approach and have two options. You can specify inside this rules array as a constant or as an array. Okay, if we just change this into an array, where the first element of the sub array is the rule name, and we can have key value appears right here. So for example, match attribute. Okay, this might be the key using which we want to match. Okay, we can just write even match, for example, match password. Okay, and now we need to make the proper validation. So we need to actually implement our model's validate method considering these rules. Okay, we can also use this min and max, and let's go to the password and we can specify right here as a nested array. Okay, self rule minimum, and we can specify what must be the minimum value to be 8, for example, and we can specify max as well, self rule max. I don't know why we need to restrict the password max length, but just to showcase that we have to implement this max rule as well, let's do it. Maybe maximum 24 characters. Okay, let's go to the model right now and start working on this validate. So first of all, we have to iterate over the rules what we have declared. Okay, so the rules is abstract method, but it will be declared inside the child class. It won't be abstract anymore. So these rules as we have right here an attribute, and we have the rule, but this is not actually rule, this is rules. So each attribute corresponds to multiple rules. Okay, so we have to iterate right now these rules as well. Okay, for each rules as rule, and let's take the value. So what will be the value for that attribute? So that will be value equals this attribute. Okay, just like this. If the attribute is first name, this first name will be taken out and written inside the value. Now let's go through all these rules. So we know that each rule might be a string, a constant, or it might be an array as well. Okay, so we can test this. We can say that the rule name is the rule itself. Okay, and if it is not string, if the rule name is not string, then what we do is the rule name equals, we know in this case that it is an array. So we can even write if it's an array, but let's just write if it's not a string, then from the rule, we just take the first element, which will be the actual rule name, right? Okay, and then we can go and write some if statements to make the validation. So for example, if the rule name equals self required and the value doesn't exist, in this case we know that there is a validation error of required. Okay, so imagine that we have the first case, the first attribute, first name. So we are iterating over these rules, right, in the model. Then we are iterating over the rules of each individual attribute right here. Okay, so this will take the required, and we're going to test if the rule name is required and the value doesn't exist. So if the first name was not provided from the user inside the form, the value basically won't exist, and this validate must be definitely called before this validate must be called after the load data. Okay, if we just call the validate before the load data, of course none of the attributes will be populated, nor first name, neither last name, and so on. Okay, so first we have to load data, and after this, if the value doesn't exist, we need to show some kind of error. So I'm going to create right here public array errors. Okay, and this will be the errors array which will just gather all the errors. So, and I'm going to create right here a method, this add error. Okay, and we have to specify the attribute. I want to add error on this attribute, and the error type will be self required. self required. This is the error type. Okay, we have to implement this add error. So I'm going to create a method right here, public function add error, which will accept attribute, and it will accept also rule. Okay, rule name, we can call it rule name as well, but let it be rule. String, both of them will be string. And now we need to actually save the error inside the errors array. So each property might have multiple errors according to the register model. So for example, if the email was not provided, okay, it is not the required rule basically will fail, but it is not also valid email address. Okay, so that's the thing, and we need to consider this as well. So inside the errors, for the given attribute, I'm going to make this as a sub array, and I'm going to specify right here the error text. Okay, what will be the text for the given rule? So for this, probably we need to create one more method, public function error messages. Okay, and let's just return an associative array right here. So self, and I'm going to quickly copy and paste actually the following texts. Okay, so okay, here we have. So this is an associative array where each rule corresponds to some text. This field is required, this field must be valid email address, the minimum length for the field must be whatever is this, and this is the placeholder, and it needs to be actually replaced with the value, okay, minimum or maximum or match. So let's do like this. I'm gonna call right here, let's actually create a message variable, these error messages for the given rule. Okay, if it exists, otherwise let's just show an empty string. Okay, and then we put the message right here. Okay, we have to consider, of course, this minimum and maximum as well, but let's see so far how this works. So the validation basically should already work for the required. So if we just go to the auth controller, and when we do the validate, let's actually implement the returning value from this validate. Okay, so at the end of this for each loop, right here at the end of the method, we need to return if this errors is not empty. Okay, if it is empty, actually if it is empty, we need to return true, which means that there are no errors. So this add method was never called while iterating the attributes, and thus no validation errors exist. Okay, and let's quickly go to the auth controller. Okay, and right here let's just print the register model errors. Okay, and let's have a look. Let's go to the browser and refresh it, and we're not seeing any error basically because we have populated everything, but let's hit the submit. And here we have it. So on first name we have these fields required, on last name and so on we have the same errors on every field. So required validation works fine. Let's implement other ones as well. So if the rule name equals self rule email, for example, and right here I'm going to use filter var. Okay, and this accepts a value and it accepts a constant. Okay, filter validate email constant, and this basically will validate if the value is valid email address or not and return true or false. So if the rule name is email but the filter of this variable with the email rule was not successfully done, then this is not a valid email address. Okay, so right here I'm going to change into email, and on the attribute we're adding this rule email. Right now if we just reload the page, we see second error on the email. This field must be valid email address. Perfect. So we are progressing so far very well. So the next thing is rule name. If the rule name is, for example, self rule minimum, in this case we need to check what's the minimum value. Okay, and we actually need to take the rule attributes. Like in the register model, we pass, if this is an array, we have this minimum value. So we need to take this minimum value as well right here. So how do we do this? So this rule basically is the array right here, and we just need to access the min property of this rule. Okay, so if the rule name equals the minimum and the str length, the length of the value, is less than the rule minimum value, whatever is this, then we have validation error. Okay, so if the rule is minimum and the value is less than whatever is the minimum, if the, for example, if I just write 2 letters inside the password and the minimum is 8, of course this condition will be true, and if this will be true, the error will be added inside the attribute, and the error rule type will be rule minimum. Excuse me. And we have to do the same thing for max. So if the rule is max and the length is greater than whatever is maximum allowed, then we need to show right here max as well. Okay, and let's actually have a look at this before I continue. So right here we have this minimum problem. The password basically is 1234, and the min length of this field must be, and right here we see this placeholder. Okay, and we shouldn't actually see the placeholder, because this placeholder must be actually replaced with the actual minimum value. So right in the add error method, we can pass the whole rule, whatever is this, and that's going to be, we can call it as a params. Okay, and that will be the params of this error message. Okay, and how do we need to do this? So we take the message and we need to iterate over the message. No, we need to iterate over the params with key value pairs, key and value, and inside this message we need to replace this this max thing. Okay, so str replace, we search for the following string. So inside curly braces, I'm going to write the key. We're searching the key, which will be the min. For example, this array will be passed to the method right here as a params. Okay, we iterate over it, and we take the this value minimum, and we're gonna replace it with the actual value for minimum. Okay, which will be value, right? And we're going to do this inside the message, of course. Okay, and let's test how this will work. Actually, right here, it won't work, because actually this will work, but in a wrong way. Let's have a look. Refresh the page. Okay, it doesn't work. So we get the message, search for the key, and replace it with the value. Okay, let's just dump params right here, but I think we don't pass the rule. Yeah, we don't pass the rule for minimum. So let's have a look. And here we have 8, but this 8 is written inside the curly braces. Okay, because this was evaluated without the curly braces. So I'm gonna put right here one more curly braces. Okay, and the inside curly braces and the variable is evaluated as a actual variable value, the mean, and it's like mean written right here. Okay, and then it should work. Let's have a look, and here we have it. Min length of the field must be 8. Okay, perfect. We have implemented this as well. It will work in the exact same way for max value, so I'm not going to spend time on this. And the next thing is to test the match. Okay, in this case we need to compare if the password value matches to the password confirm. Okay, so how do we need to do this? So right here I'm going to write if the value, if the rule type is match, and if the value is doesn't equal to whatever is this, and right here I'm going to specify rule match. Okay, look at this. This rule match is the attribute name, in this case password. Okay, and I'm just accessing the password value using this approach. Okay, the value will be password confirm because we have this rule match written for the password confirm. Okay, right here, and the value will be the value for password confirm, and we're going to just check this. And right here I'm going to specify the match, and we have this rule right here as well, and right here we have this match. So this should actually work. So let's have a look. Okay, we don't see this error because probably we have written the valid password. So let's just type Zura at example.com 1 2 3 4 and 1 2. Hit the enter, and here we have it. The min length of this field must be 8. This field must be the same as password. So this is perfect so far. Okay, so we have successfully implemented this. Awesome. And now in the out controller, so we actually have this validate method which will go through all the fields and do the validation based on the rules which is described right here. And if the validation is done, we need to do the registration. However, if the validation is not done, we have to show validation errors. And that's the biggest challenge at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to remove this var dump. And right now, if the validation is not done, we see the same form, but we don't see any errors, and my entered values are not pre-populated. So we have to do this. So again, there are a couple of options, and we just need to choose the best option so that let's just don't give anybody a reason to complain about the PHP, that using PHP, you can write only clunky code and not nice and clean code. Okay, so let's just at least try to do this. So in the register, we actually get this model. Okay, we pass from the out controller and we get the model. And based on this model, we can display the errors, pre-populate some values, and so on. But this is not the very best way to do. So for example, so if I just write PHP echo right here, for example, I just write value equals PHP echo the model. So I know that I get the model, so I'm going to just use this model first name, okay, or just like this. And if I reload the page, the Zura is written right here, and I have to do the exact same thing for other fields. And I just need to also check if there are some errors for the first name, and I need to make this red and display the error and things like that. Okay, it's possible, but I have to write a lot of code for just single form group. Okay, imagine that I need to do right now the validation as well. So how I need to do this? So right here I just need to write PHP echo model has error for first name, for example, first name. This has error doesn't exist, so I will go to the model and create this has error right here, which will accept the attribute and just return true or false. And it's very easy to do. If inside these errors there exists something for attribute, and if its length is greater than 0. So we just need to check the both cases. Okay, just isSet is not enough. Okay, let's do like this. Has error, if there exists something, let's just return true. Otherwise, let's just return false. And this actually won't work. Okay. Let's just do like this. Okay, perfect. Okay, now I'm using this has error, and if the model has error, then what? So I have to specify right here is invalid, oops, which is the bootstrap class. Otherwise, I just don't add anything. Okay, so and if we just have a look right here, okay, the first name is provided, so we don't see anything. So I'm going to delete and hit the submit, and something is wrong right here. I just missed the space. And here we have. So now my field is red, but I also need to display what is the actual error, and that should be invalid dash feedback. okay? And right here, I just need to write model get first error for the given attribute. Okay, I know that there might be multiple errors for the given attribute, so I have to implement the get first error. So I'm gonna display just one error at a time. So attribute, and I'm going to just return these errors for given attribute at position 0 if it exists, otherwise just an empty string or false value. Okay, and if we just reload this right here, oops, what's going on? Attribute get first error, and oops, it should be first name, of course. Okay, and here we have it. So this field is required, and using this approach, of course, I can do this thing, but imagine that the form gets very large, and this actually is the thing what a lot of developers who actually hate the PHP can start complaining that this is why the PHP is the ugly language and I hate it. Okay, so we can make this in a cleaner way, and let's try to do this. I just wanted to show to you how you can write a bit code. So this is not perfect code. It's working, it will work, but it's not very user friendly, and if you want to like improve your skills, we have to find always better ways. So let's go to the models, and right here actually we need to create a form. So inside the core, I'm going to create form sub namespace, and inside the form I'm going to create two classes. Okay, form, which will have a namespace of up core form, and I have to create the second class, which will be field, which will be up core form field. Okay, here we go. And now inside the form, I'm going to create two static methods. Okay, public static function begin, which will create the form opening tag. Okay, form with action equals something and method equals something. Okay, and I'm going to create also public static function end. Okay, and I'm going to use these. Let me return from here as well. So that should be closing tag of form, and I'm going to use this inside the register. Okay, right here, instead of writing this, I'm going to write PHP echo form begin. Okay, and this should actually output whatever is returned from here. Okay, but we need to be able to specify the action and the method. So action, for example, needs to be the same URL, but the method needs to be post. Okay, and the begin must accept both action and method. Okay, and I need to put this action and method right here. Okay, so for this I'm gonna use a sprintf function. Okay, and this will accept the string and additional arguments, and whenever it's this printf will see a % and s, for example, it formats the string basically, and whenever it sees this printf, it will replace the next with the next arguments. So if you just want to read more about this printf, just go to the php.net, and it has a lot of formatting options, not only this s, % and s, but for like binary numbers and digits and so on. Okay, so I want to format this string, so I'm gonna use this way. And then what I want to do, so basically I'm going to come from the register PHP's perspective. Okay, so I want right here to create a form in this way. Then I want to finish my form with this way. Okay, form end, for example, and right here I want to create fields very easily, and I also want to be able to specify the model, the register module, that this field is for register module, so that it can automatically take the errors from there as well. Okay, so how I can do this? So I'm going to actually return from this begin, not this string. I'm going to just output the string, but I'm going to return an instance of the form. Okay, new form. Okay, then inside the form, I'm going to create a function field. Okay, and this field will accept a modal, and it will accept attribute as well. Okay, and this will return new field. Okay, and we're just going to pass the modal and attribute inside this new field. So the modal is not imported. Control space, hit the enter, it was imported. Let's generate this constructor for the field as well. So I'm going to create public, actually we need to create properties first, public modal, and public string attribute. Okay, and let's just generate the constructor. Let's actually import this modal first and then generate the constructor with both attributes, and here we have it. Okay, this looks good, and from the register PHP I want to do like this. So form equals to form begin, and this begin outputs the begin tag and just returns the form instance. So I have this instance, and I want to also change the way that I'm returning the form end closing end tag. I'm just going to output this as well. Okay, and right here I'm going to call form field. I'm going to specify the modal, and that's going to be the modal we have right here, and that's the register modal. And I'm going to specify also the attribute, for example, first name. Okay, just like this. And this should already create the form group, this thing, for me. And I will just repeat this few more times. Okay, first name, last name, this will be email, password, and confirm password, right? And here's my form. It's very clean, very minimalistic. What else I'm missing right here is the submit button. So I'm going to copy this submit button and put it down right here. And one more thing is to just actually we need to delete these things as well. And let's test how this works so far. So I'm going to comment all this code, not delete at the moment. Okay, and we have the submit. We should, okay, let's have a look. So let's go to the browser and refresh it. And here we have it. Uncode error, object of class field could not be converted to string. Why this happens? Because this form field returns an instance of the field. And we just output this, and it's not very good. Let's continue reading the error. Could not be converted to string, blah, blah, blah. Right here, it points to the destination as well, where this happens. It's register PHP line 3. But what we can actually do is that if we just open the field and right here implement magic method to string, okay? This is the implementation. Whenever we try to print the object, whatever is returned from this toString method, it will be printed. So if I just return 1 from here and have a look right here, we see the 5-1 for each input field, we see 1. But we need to do something else, right? So I want to use the form group template, okay? So actually I'm going to copy this second one, okay? And right here, I'm going to pass it down to sprintf, okay? Again, inside the string, here is the form group, whatever we need right here. And I need a couple of placeholders. So, for example, for the name, okay, we need placeholder for the value as well, okay? And we might need placeholder for additional classes, for whether the field is invalid or not, okay? %s right here as well. And we might also need placeholder for the label, okay? This field is generic, okay? It's inside the core. Whatever class is inside the core, it's generic. We shouldn't have first name or last name there, okay? So %s right here as well. So I have to format this string right now. Okay, the first argument is string, and I have to provide the second arguments. Instead of label, I don't have a label associated to this field at the moment. So I'm gonna just output at the moment this attribute. Okay, the field has attribute which will be first name, and I'm gonna put a first name right here. And for the name, we will still have this attribute. Okay, for the value, we're gonna have this model value for this attribute, right? So I know that, let me format this nicely. I know that my model is a register model, and this attribute is the first name. So I'm just accessing the first name value. And we need this logic as well if the model contains some errors for the given thing. So I'm gonna write here, actually I'm gonna copy from the register the following thing. Okay, if model has error for the first name, okay, this thing, paste right here, and if this model has error for this attribute, okay, this is how we need to do this. Then we add is invalid class, otherwise we don't add anything. And right here we need one more div, which will have class of invalid feedback. And right here inside the invalid feedback we need %s as well. Okay, and that will be the actual error message, and this will be this model get first error for this attribute. Okay, I hope this makes sense. So I'm taking this string and formatting it with the values. So this goes right here, this goes right here, this goes right here, and so on. Okay, and finally, if I just have a look in the browser, okay, here we have an error. First name must not be initialized, must not be accessed before initialization. So that happens because in the register model, we just need to give it empty strings as a values because we are using it before we actually initialize. Okay, so let's just do this, refresh it, and here we have it. So our form was actually rendered. And if I just hit the submit button, look at this. So I see all kind of validation errors. If I just fill up the first name, last name, and if I just write some dummy text right here, hit the enter, this is okay, but this right here we have another error. This field must be valid email address. Okay, and this already looks very good. The only minor thing, I'm going to now delete this whole thing. Oops, I deleted more. And the only thing I need to do is put this first name and last name in the same row. So inside the row, oops, we just need one row, and we need 2 columns, just like this. Perfect. So look at this. Okay, so we did the validation, and we need a couple of more things right here. So for example, the password is right now input type text, which is not of course correct, so it's wrong. So we need to change this. And inside the model, right in the field, I'm going to create a method, and I'm going to call this password field, public function password field. Okay, and what this will do is that, so right here we have this input type text, which is actually not correct. So each field might be text or number or date or a couple of more things, right? And we need possibility inside the field. So right here I'm going to create one more type, which will be public string type. Okay, and inside the constructor I can set the type to be text. Okay, this type, type equals to text, but I don't want the hard-coded text. Instead, I'm going to create constants for this. Okay, so public constant type text equals text, and duplicate this, and we have right here password, and we might have number as well. Okay, just like this. That's enough for now. And right here I just specify self self type text. Okay, and whenever we call this password field, what this should do is it needs to change the type into self password, but it needs to return this. And why I'm doing this? Now from the register PHP, from here, I will just call this field basically returns the field, right? And I can change the method password field, and this password field also returns the field. So finally, this will still render how it was rendering, but we're gonna see password fields instead of text. And let's have a look. So something, hit the enter. It actually doesn't work because we are not using the type. My mistake. So we set the type, and we need to use right here as well. So %s, and after the first placeholder, I need to specify this type. Perfect. Let's have a look right now, and here we have it. Password something. I don't know if I just don't match the password. I see this error. This must match. This must be the same as password. So I just type something, hit the enter, and we have all validations. Like none of the validation errors except the email. So I'm going to type zura@example.com, hit the enter, and right here I see creating new user. Okay, and I actually should see success page in this case. Okay, but we have to also register the user in the database. Okay, we have to create table for this and make a record right there. That's it for the second part. In the next part, we're going to implement the migration system, and we're going to create the users table in the database and set up the connection to the database in general.